Speaking of vetting, and speaking of carrier vetting and all of those things, we are happy to bring Scott Cornell from Travelers back
Oh, yeah.
onto the show. He's their lead. He's their transportation lead and crime and theft specialist. And we're going to talk a little bit about how freight brokers should be properly vetting their carriers. So, Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, guys. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, no, hey, it's first time catching up in 2021. So I think we're going to reset the table a little bit and talk about how we go about, at the source, right at the source, how you go about vetting carriers and the importance of that. Can you shed a little light on it?
Sure. I'll give you the short and then a little bit longer answer, right? So the number one rule and the short answer, which sounds very basic, is you really have to know who you're doing business with. You have to make sure that you are thoroughly vetting and verifying the identity of anybody that you're going to consider a business partner you're going to work with. So that's the short answer. It's very high level. But the details behind that, have a little more meat to them. So today we're going to concentrate on freight brokers, but that rule generally applies to anybody, shippers, carriers, truck drivers, to you name it, right? So speaking in general terms, people tend to trust and assume that the information that people are sending us is accurate. And most of the time it probably is. But it only takes one time for it to be wrong, and that one time can be expensive. We recommend things like, going to the actual website of the company that you're vetting and calling the phone number that they have listed, not just taking the phone number that is sent to you via email or that they call from, but actually go to the website, call that number that's on their official website, and confirm via that number that the person that you're talking to works for that organization, that they are in the position they claim to be in, that they represent that, and they have the ability to authorize the transactions on behalf of that company. And yeah, these examples are kind of high level. When we work with our clients to teach them how to vet, we create more of a step-by-step plan. But those are some pretty basic things that we see sometimes people skip over. And then once you've verified the legitimacy of that business partner, you also need to vet their insurance and make sure that they have the coverages that you need. So while a freight broker is less likely to be liable since they don't physically handle the goods, experiencing a loss can jeopardize a relationship for them with their shippers. So additionally, there are other ways freight brokers can find themselves in an unfavorable position if they fail to make sure that the partners, have the right insurance coverage. So some policies have exclusions. They can be for very specific things, right down to the commodity level. So if we use an example, if you're brokering out a load of seafood for a company that doesn't have coverage or has a specific exclusion for frozen seafood, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it certainly can. When you're a broker, you're kind of in this quasi-responsibility thing, and a lot of people jump into this, and it's the less sexier part, right? Kind of, you're going into getting the insurance and stuff, but it's incredibly, incredibly important. Can you go a little bit deeper into some of those exclusions or key coverages that a freight broker really needs to be on the lookout for?
Sure. All insurance policies are not created equal, and those that have a lot of exclusions or the absence of key coverages or boxing out your coverage are really good examples. Another exclusion beyond the commodity base is one that we sort of just discussed, which is voluntary parting. So voluntary parting is an exclusion that's intended to deal with things like a fictitious pickup or an identity theft or a double brokering scam. So in a case like that, the freight broker is unaware that they're giving the goods to the bad guys or a thief, and so that may not be covered if you have that exclusion. Alternatively, go ahead. So, the absence of key coverages is something that freight brokers should be on the lookout for as well. Since, if we take an example, since the FSMA updates came out, shippers might often require a carrier to have broken seal coverage for perishable commodities. And many insurance companies don't offer that type of coverage. So as a result, the freight broker could be booking loads with a carrier that doesn't have this kind of coverage in their policy. And if they don't have that and there is a loss, then the freight broker may end up picking up that claim with their contingent coverage, if they have contingent coverage, just to save the relationship between them and their shipper. When you talk about possibly boxing in or of the motor carrier's coverage is something else that freight brokers will want to take a look at and make sure that they're avoiding. Scheduled vehicles are a good example of this, where only specific vehicles listed on the policy are covered. And you want to make sure that if you're the freight broker moving that load with them, that one of those vehicles is the one that you're putting your freight with. Or sublimits are another good example, which is the type of coverage limitation that refers to the value of what's being shipped. It's important to pay attention to any sublimits and make sure you prevent booking a load through a carrier that's not insured for the total value of the load that you're trying to book. Freight brokers are going to want to compare any requirements provided by the shipper to the motor carrier's policy specifically and select a motor carrier partner that's able to provide the right coverage in that kind of a place. And it does require a few extra steps to do your due diligence, but it can potentially save you from a big loss or a hassle in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. So people, they want to vet their carriers. They want the help of travelers. Where do we send them to?
So, with all these best practices in place, a loss can still occur. It can just happen. So what can freight brokers do when that happens? For cargo theft, we've talked about that in the past, the three of us. The chances of recovery significantly decrease after 48 hours after the event. So that can be particularly challenging for freight brokers because they're relying on the motor carriers to communicate timely and quickly when a theft happens. Something to consider as a freight broker: if you have a loss, what resources are at your disposal? If it's a theft, who's going to help you look for that stolen cargo? If it's a different kind of loss, what other resources does your insurance partner offer you to mitigate that loss? Travelers, we have services of our special investigations group, our risk control team, our claim team, you name it, we're very specialized. And for more information on that, you can go to travelers.com/transportation resources.
Thanks, Scott.